Hey everybody, I want to just welcome you. Thank you for being here tonight. This is exciting. I do like this new place. I think it's going to be great, especially as the weather gets nicer. And yeah, like I told a few of the others, I think we're going to have to turn everything around. Otherwise, everybody will be staring out the window the whole time, won't hear a word that I have to say. So anyway, and I hope that in the future, I'm not the only one presenting. Next week, my sister and her husband, you guys have all heard me talk about them. They're going to be here. They're going to be presenting. So just a little preview on that there. But this week we are starting, officially we're starting week 5, but we're covering element 3. Element 3, how to get from here to there. Can anybody remind us of what our other 2 weeks were? What was the first week?
Oh my God. Let somebody else answered it.
We've got you, Amanda. We don't need to.
Right. Everybody's become dependent on you already.
I know. Everybody gets assigned a week. Remember.
All right. So, week 1. What did we cover? What was the big thing? Amanda, what was it? I know you know. All right.
Well, being clear why you are here.
Why? The big why. Why? What's driving us? Why do we even care about our health? I mean, yeah, we've got this little thing in the back of our head that says we probably should, right? Or maybe we look in the mirror and we see certain things we don't necessarily like, and that reminds us that we probably should. Or whatever. There's lots of different reasons, but it's really important, whatever we're setting our mind to, especially if we're investing time and energy and money, we should really understand why we're doing it. And at the end of the day, for something as important as our health, we want to be able to go back to that. And at times, we're going to need to draw motivation from the why. So we talked about the intrinsic motivation that comes from knowing, from understanding our why. And then the second week, what was the big question that we covered? Our what? What exactly do we want? He's just that smart, everybody. He's just that smart. No, we talked about it's really good to get clear on what we want. What do we want our end goal to be, right? Why do we want it? What's the motivating factors? What exactly do we want? What's our target? What are we heading toward? And when we keep those things in sight, they really help us. We're going to talk about how those things, we draw those things in tonight as we discover how to get to where we want to be, to get to where we go from here, right? So, how do we create the desired outcomes that we hope for? Ultimately, we must master the ability. You might want to write this part down. Ultimately, we want to master the ability to create a series of small, sustainable changes in our daily choices that will over time produce a long-term transformation. So I had a health assessment call actually with somebody from California a couple of hours ago. And in my why questioning with her, she said, because I've tried diets before and I've watched my friends and I want something that's going to last. And she says, I need to know that this is something that can last. And I said, well, you're in luck. And I shared with her several of the things that are unique about this particular program. And she was excited to hear that this is a transformational system. It's based around a series of changes that develop habits. And it's designed to be a system that develops those habits that can lead to long-term transformation.
That again, master the ability to.
Ultimately, we must master the ability to create a series of small, sustainable changes in our daily choices that will, over time, produce a long-term transformation. And this video will be on YouTube later this week.
Okay.
So you can always go back and grab things that you missed along the way. So the truth is, and you guys have probably all heard me say this before, that if we return to our old way of doing things, you will return to your old way of looking and feeling and being. It's just inevitable. You will return to your former way, I can guarantee it. Right? So, Let me just say this. Show me your habits, and I will show you your future. If we can demonstrate our habits, they will give us clear insight into what our future is going to be and what it's going to look like, right? Well, the good news is that the Habits of Health Transformation System is designed to effectively install new habits that lead to optimal health, all right? So we're taking the step to install new habits. It'll be the difference between those who sustain the weight that they lose and those that join the ranks of the one that didn't work out. And that's the thing. I don't want Optavia to be that thing that people say, yeah, that didn't work for me either. But of course, there's only so much I can do. So we want to do the best that we can to prepare you and to help you. But installing these new habits is what's going to be really key, right? So I'm going to shoot straight. This program won't work for you unless you work for it. All right? And it comes down to the fact that we've got to be willing to put in the work. By the way, neither will any other program. So it doesn't matter what system you use, what program. If you don't work for it, it's not going to work for you either. So tonight, I want to teach you 4 steps that can help, and these are right out of your life book. So again, as we go through these things, I hope that the live training can be helpful in one sense, and then you guys have these books. And by the way, if you don't have these books, I did get some in. I have a few here with me tonight. You can grab one before you go, and I won't even charge you that much. Just kidding. I'll sell them for 10. Yep. So tonight I'm going to teach you these 4 steps that can help. Step 1, use the structural. You don't have to write this down because we're going to go slowly through all of these. Step 1, we're going to use the structural tension to organize your macro habits. Step 2, we're going to identify the micro habits that you need to install, kind of in what order and that kind of thing. Step 3, set up a habit loop for a specific habit of health so that you can create a system or a program for developing that habit. And then step 4, connect present action to immediate and long-term rewards. So let's go ahead and let's look at step 1. We're going to use structural tension to organize your macro habits. So in a minute, I'm going to show you what I call a structural tension chart. But before that, I want to do a little bit of illustration. I'm going to need Mike up here. So let's say that that Mike is where you currently are at, your starting point. Okay, your starting weight, your starting health situation, whatever. Go ahead and just grab onto that and hold it there for me. Now, is that rubber band doing anything for him right now? No. Just kind of hanging there, right? Okay. So I am going to represent the goal, what we're after, what we want to accomplish, right? And it's only when we take and we stretch the rubber band. Go ahead and grab both sides and don't let go. We've already talked about this. He's already threatened me, I mean. It's when we put it between the two of us. And now, if I'm the future self, I'm the goal, I'm the desired outcome, right? I'm beginning to pull Mike. Now, Mike, do you feel pressure to come toward me, yes, right? So go ahead and give into that pressure just a little bit, slowly, right? You can use the tension of your future self, the vision and the goals that you've set to begin to pull you toward the goal. Thank you very much. Excellent job. So let's hear it for my assistant, please. All right. So we have our current reality and we have our desired result. We want to set the things up that create the tension between the two. When you have just the current reality, and that's before we start a program, we're just living in this current reality, right? It just kind of hangs limp. It's just there. It's like what we deal with, what we live with. It's where we're at, right? But then sometimes we just kind of have this dream of, wouldn't it be nice to be like, or we see somebody else online or on TV or something, we go, man, it's nice to look like that. I used to look like that. I used to, and we have a little bit of a dream, but we don't really connect it to anything. Then there's no tension. There's nothing to pull us along in that direction. So we want to set up a way to kind of create that tension and move us in the right direction, right? So we're going to look at 3 things. And I'm sorry this is so small from where you're at. I hope you can see it from where you are. Your current reality, right? Let's say your reality is you're overweight, you're 195 pounds, got a little muffin top thing going on right here. Waistline is 35 inches, and these numbers are actually pretty close to where I was. And then over here you have the desired result. I want to be healthy. I want to feel good, right? I'd rather weigh, actually, for me it was 155 was my goal, and I wanted to be able to wear 30 size pants because that's what I wore in college. That's when I felt really good. I felt great about myself, right? And so what we have to do is we have to put these secondary choices in here, right? Here's where we're at. This is where we want to be. We got to fill in the middle with some things that are going to get us there. And of course, if you look at this, you'll notice that this is basically the outline for our 5-in-1 plan, right? Portion control, 6 meals per day, eating a breakfast every day starting in the morning and an hour or so after you wake up. Low glycemic, carbs only, lean and green, 1 daily, 8 glasses of water plus daily. So we start fitting those things in, and those become the tension between where we're at and where we want to be. Got to have that thing in between that says you could do this, and it pulls us in the right direction, right? It's kind of like, just to give you one more example, it's kind of like internal GPS. So last night I was putting this all together, and I was thinking, where do I really want to be? 155 pounds, waist 30 size jeans, or in a more practical location sense, I want to be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I love Fort Lauderdale. Well, I've been down there a few times, and I just love that whole area, the way it looks, the way it feels. And so I thought, that's where I want to be. So in a GPS, you've got your starting point, right? And the GPS it knows where you're at. You can't change your starting point. You are where you are, right? But then you can put in whatever you want to be your destination. I put in Fort Lauderdale, and of course I hit go, and my phone draws this line. And so we've got our starting point and we've got our end point, but in between, now we've got all the directions, right? You got the little map that shows you where you're going to go, where you're going to turn, what you're going to do. And of course, there's a whole lot more of those between here and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But anyway, you get the idea, right? Those are all of the roads and the turns and all of the things it's going to take for you to get from your starting point to your ending point. We've got to fill that stuff in. We've got to figure out what that stuff is going to be. Those are going to be the habits that we build that are going to get us to where we want to be and where we need to be. We've got to be intentional about the habits that we adopt. It's being unintentional that got us to where we're at. And I mean, if we think back, we look back, we realize that what got us to where we were was the fact that we didn't really have a plan. We wing it in the moment. We do what we want to do. We open the fridge to see what am I in the mood for, not what's going to fuel my body most effectively and best for me right now. So we've got to be intentional. We've also got to realize that taking a wrong turn will get us to the wrong destination, or it won't get us to the destination that we want to be. And for some of us, if we're not intentional about the habits that we set, we end up setting a bunch of bad habits, right? The habit of yo-yo dieting, or maybe the habit of quitting altogether. Some people are literally in the habit of quitting, habitual quitters, if you will. So we want to avoid that, and part of it is setting up these kinds of plans. So again, there's more detail in the life book that shows you how to set up this tension, right? And to start putting these things in. So step 2 in this whole thing is identify the next micro habit to install. I found this a little bit interesting. It didn't go the way that I expected it to as I was reading along, but it makes sense. And so I'm gonna lay it out here for you. So the questions that Dr. Anderson recommends that we ask is it appealing? Do I want to do it? Well, it has to be somewhat appealing. Otherwise, we're just not going to do it, right? I know for me, the idea of eating 6 times a day was, I knew it. I mean, I'd heard it many times before, but it was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I want to do that. I want to do what's the right thing to do. So is it appealing? Yes. Do I want to do it? Yes. Is it achievable? Yeah, I can do it. And of course, the program makes it very achievable because it gives you the fuelings and it gives you the plan and puts it all together. Can I actually do it? Yep, I can do it. Is it easily activated? Again, simplicity. Now, that changes as you go along. Some things that were more difficult in the beginning, as you move forward, it's kind of a snowball effect. You begin to pick up momentum going in the right direction, and it is more possible and easier to activate. And then you've got to ask, is there a prompt that reminds me to do it? So this is one of the points that's pretty important. You've got to figure out what you're going to use as a prompt. It may be the accountability of another person. It may be actually writing down. Some people need to write things down. Some people need to set alarms. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. But basically it boils down to this. We need steps that are easy, obvious, and strategic. Easy meaning I can step from here to here. Now if I want to go from here to Fort Lauderdale, I've got to have a whole bunch of steps in between. From here to Fort Lauderdale is just way too big step. I can't just do that. So I've got to have my GPS break it down into piece by piece by piece by piece. Roads, turns, all of that, right? So we've got to break it down into small steps. It's got to be obvious. It's got to be something that makes sense, that we know what it is. So that's, again, one of the things that we love about the plan is that it's obvious. It's very clear what to do. 5 fuelings and 1 lean and green a day. Here's exactly how you make a lean and green. It's all laid out. But beyond the weight loss portion of this journey, then we got to continue to plug in new habits and new ways, new steps that are easy, obvious. And then the third one is strategic. Things that we know are moving us in the right direction, right? If I was on that GPS and all of a sudden it wanted me to head north, I should be able to, in my brain, go, I don't think I want to go north. There might be something wrong with this. Fort Lauderdale is south, and in the wintertime, anybody who's going north is going the wrong direction.
Yeah, right.
So, anyway, that's right, rerouting. So for me, a good example is the example of the habit of motion, right? That's one of our macro habits, healthy motion. It started out small. I didn't feel like doing a lot of exercise. I mentioned back in the spring, I was getting in the gym, I was working out. Honestly, it wasn't fun. It didn't feel good. I wasn't losing any weight. It was discouraging and all of that. But when I started losing weight, and actually I wanted to work on my core, but doing crunches, I'd do like 10 of them and I'd be out of breath because I'm pressing my guts up against my lungs, and it was just an uncomfortable, awkward feeling. But then I started losing weight, and then the crunches felt like my muscles were actually contracting, and I could feel myself getting stronger. And so as I went along, I started out small, but as I kept going, I kept feeling stronger, and I kept wanting to do it more and getting more benefit out of it, right? So interest grew as I lost weight, and now I'm doing full-on workouts, and I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. I feel like I did back when I was in college, and I enjoy that feeling. Milan can attest. I'm down there working out all the time. These guys are probably just shaking their head like, our stupid dad, what's wrong with that guy? Anyway, right? He didn't say amen. Okay, good. That's good. That's good. All right, so we need to identify the next micro habits to install, and we need to look at what's the next easy, obvious, strategic step. So we don't need to try to fix the whole thing. You don't have to read this whole book next week, but you just got to look for what's the next thing that I could do, the next small step I can take that's clear. I can clearly take it. I know how to take it, and then it's strategic. It's moving me in the right direction. And remember, we got the 6 macro habits. Let's review those really quick. Anybody besides Amanda remember what?
Health management.
Weight management, right? Healthy weight management.
Hydration.
Nutrition and hydration. Healthy nutrition and hydration. Okay. Movement.
I'm cheating.
No, you're fine. I don't care.
Healthy mindset.
That's movement. Movement is exercise. Yep.
Healthy mindset.
Healthy mindset, which, by the way, we're covering in 2 weeks, and I've already been putting notes together for. I'm excited about that one.
And healthy environment.
Healthy environment. That's right.
Better sleep.
And then healthy sleep and energy management. Right. So those are the 6 things, and within those, there's a whole bunch of micro habits. So we want to begin to start identifying which things we can work on. Don't try to do 15 at once. You may want to, because you're like, I want to get there, but that's not going to help you. If you speed on the road, right, you got the GPS, you got all the directions. If you speed, you're going to get pulled over, you're going to end up in a wreck. And so we want to take it easy, obvious, strategic steps, okay? All right, step 3, we can set up a habit loop to install those secondary choices. Again, there's got to be certain things that help us to establish new habits, right? We are creatures of old habit, and we will tend to continue doing the same things we've done before. So, especially for us old dogs, trying to learn new tricks, it's going to be important that we kind of think through this. How can I set up new habits? What is the science behind habit formation? How can we use that science to help us to create new habits, right? So these are some suggestions. We've got to set up a habit loop to install those secondary choices. First thing we need to do is pick a cue to initiate the habit. A cue could be like, for example, how many of you guys have found on your phone, you found the Optavia app, and you are using that to, there's a meal tracker, right, that will remind you every 3 hours to eat. Has anybody used that yet? So there's a new tool that you guys can use, right? So you can set that to go off every 3 hours to remind you. Now, you may not need that. Some people need a reminder, and a phone reminder can be a great thing. What's another cue that you could set to remind you to do something? Any ideas?
Get organized, like before you leave the house so that you're planning ahead for your meals.
Okay, planning ahead, right? Being able to put things in place beforehand with certain triggers throughout the day. One of the things that I've done is I used to sleep as late as I could in the morning, which when the boys are going to school and all that isn't that much later, right? Because we get up, we do devotions as a family in the morning, we do our breakfast together and all of that kind of stuff. I take the boys to school. But by setting my alarm when Jen's alarm goes off and getting up when she gets up, and she starts getting things going out in the kitchen, I go downstairs and I get on the elliptical machine. So for me, the cue is setting my alarm in the morning. And then from there, I've got a little bit of a kind of a little pattern running, right? I get up, I go downstairs, I turn on the coffee maker. Very, very important part of this whole process, okay? Turn on the coffee maker. I also use the bathroom. Then I go weigh in, and then I go get water. I fill up my water, my 32-ounce water bottle. I go over, I drink as much as I can right there first thing in the morning after I've weighed in, and then I get on the elliptical machine I'm up to 26 minutes now, right? So it's the cue is the alarm clock goes off, but then I've set a little bit of a pattern that I follow every morning, right? So that's the cue to initiate the habit. And actually, and then one other cue that I thought about was the when this, then that, okay? So whatever that is. When my water bottle is empty, that's my cue, when I drink the last of it, to fill it up. I don't set it down and go do something else because I'm likely to forget. I'm going to fill it up right then, because then every time I look at my water bottle and I keep it with me throughout the day, then I know I have more to drink in order to get to my healthy water intake for the day, okay? So that's what setting up cues is like, and of course there's 100 different ways to do that, but it's up to each one of us based on our own life patterns to set cues that will work for us, right? So the second step is execute the routine, right? So what is the routine? So I mentioned my morning kind of workout thing. The cue is the alarm clock. I've now set my alarm to go off, and then I've got to execute that. So if I roll over and go back to sleep, then I cut this pattern, right? So I had the cue, but then I didn't execute the routine. So you actually have to then go through with whatever that routine is, right? So the routine must be doable, and the main goal of doing this routine is consistency. continuing to do it over and over. And I'm telling you, it's way easier now to do my little morning routine than it was back before. By the way, the other thing is, talk about the steps, right? Easy, obvious, and strategic. I do that 4 days a week, not all 7, because I also need breaks. And if I do too much, I know I'll burn myself out. So I have my alarm set for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Those are the 4 mornings I get up early and I do that little routine. But I have other routines, and those are the things that we've got to be thinking about and being strategic about. Okay? And then the last part is actually enjoy the reward, right? So when I get done doing that, I take a moment, I sit in front of a fan to cool off, and I drink some more of my water, and I take a moment to think about the fact I'm getting healthy. The endorphins are going in my head. And then I go get my coffee. That's the reward, right? But there's different things that we can do to reward ourselves so that we establish that. Because let's be honest, that's a part of establishing a new habit. So we've got to feel good about it. If we get done doing a habit and we hated the whole thing and we're just glad I'm done with that, well, that's not going to help establish that habit in us. So we got to be realistic about our limitations as a human being and realize that reward is an important part of it, right? So there's some emotional satisfaction. We can celebrate a victory over temptations. I actually write down a lot of my workout stuff because I want to go back and I want to celebrate. I did a whole lot more push-ups this week than I did last week or last month, you know. Those kinds of things help us to be able to feel better about it, right? I feel good about doing the right thing and making a right choice and knowing that I'm moving in the right direction to build a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. All right? Just enjoying the physical satisfaction. So if we're talking about our nutrition, if we're talking about our eating, again, one of the things I really appreciate about the Optavia fuelings and even the lean and green recipes and all of that is that there's a satisfaction of good flavor. I'm not eating stuff that I'm just like, ugh, trying to choke it down, but I'm actually enjoying. So as I'm doing these things, I'm enjoying it. There's the feeling of satisfaction when we do 6 small meals a day. One of the biggest surprises of this whole thing, I told my sister, I said, I'm going to be hangry the first few weeks. I'm going to be just mean because I'm going to be hungry all the time. And she said, well, we'll see. And I wasn't. I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, it gave me a satisfied feeling all day long, right? There's the satisfaction of, again, just feeling good because I know that I'm doing what's good for me and creating a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. So here's what that habit loop looks like, right? There's the cue. Got to come up with some cues. Then there's the routine, which we've got to be consistent with. We've got to do it. But once we do it, we need to reward ourselves in the way that we think, with the things that we experience, right? And then we start back over with the cue. And we begin to build this habit loop that creates the habit within us. And then, of course, we've got to be prepared for that day when we just don't feel like it. We've got to stick with it. Consistency is what will build actual habits. All right. And step 4, we need to connect the present actions to immediate and long-term rewards. Okay? So we have to connect our current self to our future self. Again, sort of like this stuff is all kind of coming together in step 4, the rubber band. We connect our present self with our future self, and we put those habits between us. We build the habit loop. We're working on easy, obvious, and strategic steps. And we've got to turn our goals into vision. We talked about this a little bit last week. 2 weeks ago I said, what you can't see, you can't be, right? Or you can't be what you can't see. So our goals can't be just numbers on a paper. Can't be just a weight that we're trying to get to. But it's a vision of the life that we want to live, the person that we want to be. It's an image of how we want to show up to our family, to our workplace, to the world around us. How do we want to show up in this life, and what do we want it to look like and feel like when we do that? Building that kind of vision is really important, right? So we can create this transformational cycle. This is very similar to the last one, and it just kind of adds another step. There's the cue, there's the routine, there's the instant reward. We want to add in the long-term investment. So what that means is, probably one of the best examples that I can give of this, our long-term investment or our long-term outcome is going to continue to evolve. That's the part of it that keeps evolving. It's the part that keeps going on. I've had several clients who said, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, when they got to 25 or 27 or 28 pounds, they were like, I think I can lose 40. Or I got a little bit more hanging on than I thought I would at this point. So I'm going to keep going. And so their long-term outcome changes. I never want to pressure people to change that. Nobody can tell you what is right and best for you like you can know in your inner self, in your spirit, right? But we want to look at those outcomes and we want to make sure that we're adjusting them based on what's going on. So the vision that you had at one point for where your life might be, once you get to that point, you might go, man, I can go further, right? So maybe you simply wanted to be at a healthy weight, but then once you got there, you were like, I didn't know I was going to feel like this once I got here. I want to start exercising. I want to be fit. I want to be trim, right? And I have one person in particular who's saying that they want to, they've signed up for a triathlon because they're like going, now that I'm fit and trim, I want to take the next step. I want to actually compete. I want to actually test put myself to the test. Now, that's not for everybody. That's not what I'm recommending. It's not what I'm suggesting you need to do. But I think what we do need to do is look at where we're at and see, okay, what's down the road? When we get to down the road, then we need to say, what does optimal health look like from here? I don't know if there's an end point. Obviously, our health changes over time based on all kinds of variables. But I think we can always be looking forward to the future to say, how can we continue to proceed forward from here? I think, kind of like our spiritual life, there's probably always going to be room for improvement, right? I don't think we're ever going to arrive. There's always going to be new challenges. There's always going to be new things that get introduced. And so we've got to get into the habit of developing the kind of habits that can help us to continue to move forward in our health. Okay? So, last thing I have here is this bridge illustration. Anybody ever play with Connects? Yeah, there's a few of us, a handful of us in the room. We had little boys, so we had a couple of these sets. But this is a bridge from where you are to where you want to be, and every one of those pieces is important. And every one of those pieces can become a habit that you install in your life. Now, this was a crash course on habit building, okay? I mean, I could have spent 4 weeks on this and an hour every week, and there's a lot that we could do with this. I do recommend, I hope that when I give these presentations and when we talk about this in the group, it inspires us to go back and kind of dig a little bit deeper and actually do the work. But the information is in your life book. If there's anything in this talk, and then the other videos that I've sent you guys links to have the content as well. If you need more help, feel free to ask me. But I really want you to begin thinking about what does it mean to create sustainable, long-term, transformational health. And that requires installing new habits. And the last thing, when establishing a habit, consistency is the key. We have to be willing to go in the same direction for a sustained amount of time to get to where we want to be. All right? Usually takes from 20 to 66 days to establish a habit. It's kind of a wide range, but depends on what the habit is, right? Some habits don't stick as easily as others. Some take a little bit more work to establish. But it's like installing a new part on your car. If you want to install a supercharger or something like that to soup up your car, you got to install it and you got to put it in there in order to put it to work and for it to make a difference in your life. Okay? Any questions? Was it too much too fast?
No.
Did you guys grab it?
Good, but
Okay.
I'm stuck on the idea still about, like you said, well, okay, we got to create these, different kind of routines and habits and cues to, but what about if you're like you said and you're like, I don't want to do it. I just ain't got it in me today. Like, how do you get past that?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain amount of willpower. One of the cues that I came across when I was thinking about this was accountability. So accountability can be a cue. You may have to, especially if there's a place where you continually hit the same roadblock when it comes to that I don't want to roadblock, you may have to incorporate the help of a friend and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this, but I know I got to do it. I need you to hold me accountable. And then figure out an accountability cue to set that up. All right? Does that help? Mm-hmm. No, I don't want to, but yes. I know, I'm thinking the same thing. It's easy for me to stand up here and smile and say all the right stuff.
I go work out, but some days I'm like, don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I want to change my clothes and go out there and do all that. Like,
So one question you also might want to ask is the step too big right now? And maybe it is, maybe it's
or
not.
maybe I should do it at a different time.
Right.
Like, I'm too tired maybe when I get home.
Yeah, it might just be about figuring out a different time or a different routine or
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, if you're
Weekends, like to start on a weekend.
yeah.
Get a weekend thing. Work is hard,
Yeah.
especially if you're working all day and then you can't let go of stressors. And
Yeah.
if you start on the weekend, then start that routine.
I think it's probably timing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and there's some things that aren't necessarily ready to become a habit, right? So I'm doing the other workout stuff too. That's not a habit yet. I don't have it plugged into my calendar. I'm doing the workouts and I'm enjoying those workouts, but I haven't worked out in 4 days now, which is probably the longest stretch I've had in a while, just because it's just been crazy. The schedule's been crazy. I haven't been able to do it. But the morning thing I'm doing.
Right.
That's the small step that I'm saying, this is my habit.
Committed to that one.
Right. So maybe one of those steps, you're not ready to make it a habit yet. You got to build a habit step before that, before you're ready to do that one.
Makes sense.
Yep.
I was wondering, did you find out, like, when you started this and, got your habit going and things like that, did it give you more clarity of mind?
Mm-hmm.
Did it?
Yeah, there's different steps along the way. Water is a huge part of that. The hydration, that's part of the reason that hydration is so important. It literally cleanses toxins out of your body. The actual nutrition part of it, cleaning up your gut health. A lot of the stuff we have going on in our gut that's unhealthy impacts our thought and clears up our thinking when our guts get cleaned up. Sleep, minimizing stress, all of these things. The exercise releases endorphins. So a lot of these things lead to clearer thought. And again, that's the reason why installing these habits is so important. Don't try to do them all at once, but one at a time. Get one established, move on to the next one, and keep moving. That's why all of these micro habits, they feel like they're all over the place, like there's over here and over there and over there, but they all contribute to our overall health picture.
Because I know, and I notice it very much so that, with having taken chemo, it really has affected my staying on target,
Yeah.
thinking wise.
Yeah.
And so I just wondered if, once you get into doing some exercises and things like that, if that kind of helped
Yeah.
clear up. Okay.
Yeah, I think it does. Now, obviously, there are certain limitations that we will hit along the way. But again, doing these things is designed to help us to be as healthy as we could possibly be, the best version of ourselves given the circumstances. But I think, for so many of us, and I've been there at different times, we just give up on it and we just say, forget it. And then obviously, not only do we have the big limitations that we can't do anything about, but now we've also got the limitation of the fact that we're not working it and we're not adding what we have, what we can. So, okay. Well, let's do this. I want to give you just a couple of short announcements, and then I've got some questions, and I don't know, you guys can pull your chairs out and get in circles of 3 or 4 and discuss these, because we do have a little bit of time.